I am so happy to be here with my friend Robin Goldberg, who is a registered dietitian in Southern California in Beverly Hills. She specializes in treating eating disorders, and she is the author of this new book, The Eating Disorder Trap. And I am here to ask her so many questions about eating disorders and nutrition. And I just want to start, Robin, really quickly before I get into the beef of it, asking you about your new book. It came out right at the beginning of the pandemic, didn't it?
Yes, thank you, Leora. Thank you so much for having me. It's always awesome to chat with you. I look forward to when we can hang out again, as we can now. So yes, my book, The Eating Disorder Trap, a guide for clinicians and loved ones. It was 4 years in the making, and unfortunately came out March 31st of 2020 when the pandemic hit. I had 17 book signings scheduled that never happened, and I'm looking forward to doing something or multiple events at some point. But really, this was a book. I decided, you know what, I wanted to write something that wasn't available in our field, meaning that it could be relatable to clinicians that are new in the field, seasoned clinicians that are not eating disorder clinicians, caretakers, teachers, religious figures, really written in a basic manner that anybody could comprehend this and be able to offer support to someone struggling with an eating disorder and recognize the importance of early intervention and having clinicians that are all eating disorder experts and really understanding what that looks like and medical tests to have done and really learning how to be an advocate for yourself, because so often our doctors or other providers are not eating disorder experts that we have in our lives, and knowing what steps to take and what's going through the mind of someone with any kind of eating disorder. So that was how this evolved. And then I thought, well, you know what? There aren't any books that I'm aware of that have integrated non-gender confirming pronouns. So I had asked a colleague of mine who's transgender to go through the manuscript, and they went through it for me and made sure that I had appropriate terminology there, because it's something that we're always learning.
Mm-hmm.
And then I, grew up with a brother who collected comic books, and we were really into cartoons, and I had hired an illustrator that could make light of serious topics. So I have fun illustrations.
Show everybody.
Thank you. Yes.
Really cool.
Fun illustrations, especially because someone like you, Leora, in the field, might understand what I'm talking about. But if you were to show a friend or a family member, they could maybe understand what the subject matter is based on the illustration. Yeah. So I wanted to do something. I'd said, if I was ever going to write a book, I wanted to do something that was different from all the other books in our field.
That's awesome. And, so many of the books on eating disorders are written by therapists or doctors, and it's really amazing to have one written by a dietitian who specializes in eating disorders. I don't know that I've seen any book specifically on eating disorders written by a dietitian, which is great.
I think what makes it unique is I actually have a number of expert contributors in it, 4 well-known eating disorder physicians and 2 well-known eating disorder therapists, because I felt like that would just enhance the credibility. So from a dietitian perspective, when you brought that up, I haven't actually thought about that piece, but I do agree the majority are physicians and mental health care providers. Yeah. There's a lot of great books put out by registered dietitians, but again, I always like to kind of hone in on the medical model and the part that's oftentimes an oversight. And my years of working at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center in cardiology and then in gastroenterology, I think really helped me have that perspective, as well as just the training that I've had with great mentors.
That medical piece, yeah, it's really important. So I want to start, and people can buy this. It's The Eating Disorder Trap, and people can buy it on Amazon and probably most bookstores.
So if the book the book website is theeatingdisordertrap.com, and
Okay.
it is available through Amazon, through PayPal, through BookLogix, who is the publisher, and then Diesel Bookstore, which is a local bookstore in Brentwood, California. I was selling it there, but I would say the majority of the sales have been through the other locations.
Nice. Okay. So I want to ask you a bunch of questions that I get all the time from clients and from people who just email me and have all of these questions. The very first one, especially for you, a dietitian, they're actually all dietitian questions, is about intermittent fasting. So that is the big
Trend du
buzzword
jour
these
right
days.
now.
Yes, and I hear about intermittent fasting all the time from doctors saying that it increases life expectancy and it increases mental clarity. I used to do intermittent fasting, except I was 13 years old and it was an eating disorder. You know, like all of my friends did it. We didn't eat all day long because our parents, you know, we went to school and then came home and just binged. You know, that was the start of my eating disorder. And when it got a fancy name, and I said it was kind of every 13-year-old girl's eating disorder was co-opted by tech bros and rebranded and sold. But I am curious as a dietitian to understand what happens to your body when you fast for extended amounts of time.
Well, I think, part of the problem there is when we hear like, oh, mental clarity, perhaps in the beginning, but then fatigue sets in, brain fog, the desire to consume more caffeine because you've gone so long without eating versus listening to one's body. And the other part is people don't think of headaches and fainting and irritability and everything that happens when a person goes on for so long without eating. And what could happen is the longer that you do it, and I actually talk about this a little bit in my book, the term autophagy, where like the liver feeds off of itself. And that's a problem because people are like, oh yes, the nausea you're experiencing, it will go away. It's like, no, your blood sugar's low, your body's in this fight or flight survival mode, trying to figure out how to function at an optimal place. But when people think like, oh, hunger, it's just in my belly. It can be, I'm tired, I'm hangry, I have mood swings. And when the blood sugar's so low, your body is not able to be regulated. So, the problem with intermittent fasting is it doesn't allow a person to really dial in to what their needs are. And it's funny because before that trend came out, it's like, I think about, how I feel when I wake up in the morning, and it's like, yeah, that's the longest amount of time I've gone in between meals. And sometimes I'm like, I'm hungry immediately. Other times it's 30 minutes later, but I've never been that person who's like, oh, I got to wait to X amount of time and then I'm going to eat. It's just very natural and intuitive for me to eat when my body's telling me versus having rules. And the problem is there's so many different versions of this intermittent fasting, and they're all rule based, centered around how many hours to go without eating. And the other thing is too, if a person doesn't have disordered eating or eating disorder, they will by the time they've engaged in this, because it's another rule centered around food and dieting.
Exactly. And you bring up such a good point about autophagia. Phagia is eating, auto is self, me, right? So your body is actually eating itself.
Yeah.
I read a study actually that was put out by a doctor, and this was very interesting to me because you know how so many scientific studies are kind of manipulated to make the hypothesis turn out right, but this doctor who was a staunch proponent of intermittent fasting did a study on many, many patients with the expectation that it would come out positively. But what they found was that almost all of the participants who were able to stick to the protocol lost, I think, 70% of their lean muscle mass. And although they lost weight, it was coming off of their muscles, which, as we know, isn't a good thing for healthy aging,
Yeah.
right? Or strength.
I think
Or
it's a way to accelerate the aging process as opposed to slowing it down.
yes, because muscle mass contributes to slowing down aging. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you for that. So the next thing I want to talk to you about is veganism. I was a vegan actually for 15 years, from the time I was 13 until I was 28, almost 29. I stopped after my mom died, because she begged me to start. We were both vegan. I was raised that way, basically. She's like, I think we made a mistake here. I really want you to start try to eat meat. And she was a Jewish mother, so she asked me this on her deathbed. She like guilted me, so I had to.
Could you have some brisket and gefilte fish?
Exactly. So what I hadn't realized as a vegan, because it was such a part of my childhood, really, is that I was always dizzy, and I was always anxious, and I was always like, I had attention problems, and my body, and I didn't know. I just thought that was me. And then I started eating dairy products first, then eggs, then chicken and fish, and then meat over a long period of time, a few months. And immediately there was a shift. My dizziness went away, my anxiety decreased, my actually my binge eating really decreased. My appetite it used to be really insatiable, and it wasn't. I had much less of I don't want to say less of an appetite, but it wasn't so
you didn't feel like your body was running the show. You felt like you had say in regards to what you were craving and what you wanted to eat and when you could eat versus you couldn't regulate it.
I wasn't consistent. I wasn't hungry all the time the way I always had been. And, I'm aware that that's my own personal experience. And I'm aware that this is a hot topic because so many people feel so strongly about not eating animals or animal products. But there are a lot of people who become vegan because they think that it's going to help them lose weight and help them be healthy. And in fact, I wrote about my experience in shifting from veganism to an omnivorous diet in my book, and how much it helped shift my eating disorder. And I have since, every once in a while, I get some hate mail from people saying, you are saying that everybody who needs to recover from an eating disorder needs to eat meat. And so, I really didn't say that. I said this was my experience. So I'm really curious about what your educated thoughts on veganism and vegetarianism are for people who are trying to be healthy.
So first of all, I think the rabbit ears of being healthy, it's not necessarily related to their food choices. It's in how they approach food. It's how they approach their movement. It's how they relate to others. It's how they take care of themselves, their feelings about body image. So I wanted to start with that. Now, from a perspective, vegan, vegetarianism, when a person cuts out various foods and food groups from their diet, that's a red flag, like there's a problem. And if a person felt strongly about okay, I can't eat anything animal based, but I'm going to find other protein sources that I could work in. Great. I'm going to find other iron rich foods I can work in. Great. I'm going to find sources of zinc. I'm going but it doesn't necessarily work out that way with the individuals that we see. And then they're finding that they're cold all the time. They can't keep their eyes open. Their hair is falling out. They're always hungry. They have a difficult time making a decision about what they would like to eat and what they're craving. Other problems start to develop as a byproduct of this unraveling. So I think there is a healthy way to be vegetarian or vegan, but not at the cost of eliminating various vitamin and minerals from one's diet and creating various food rules. So I can, tell you, and I'll use myself as an example. I hereditarily have had high cholesterol since I was 13. I got into my profession based on my family history of heart disease, and I am pescatarian. My guilty pleasures, I love shrimp. And remember eating shrimp like 5 or 6 days a week, and my numbers through the roof. But you know what? It's like, because I've never been someone who's a lover of protein. I remember when my dad was alive, he would have to drown the steak in ketchup for me to eat it. I mean, I, love my sushi. I love my cooked fish. I love my omelets. It's like finding things that you like and how you're able to incorporate it versus it being rule-based. And that was more the point, because I thought, well, you know what, I'm not having this. I want to make sure I've been an athlete my whole life, that I'm able to have sufficient, not only protein, but iron rich foods, calcium rich foods, really just being mindful of these areas that oftentimes are overlooked.
How do you suggest that people find a diet, not a diet, but a way of eating that gives them enough nutrients if they feel really strongly about being vegan or vegetarian?
I think it's worth, sorry to interrupt,
Yeah.
working with a registered dietitian who could help facilitate just options. So a person will see, okay, you know what, I'm cool having beans and my rice, or beans and barley, and okay, here's a way I'm not going to have a deficit of X, Y, and Z in my diet. So I think definitely working with a non-diet approach, weight inclusive registered dietitian that is knowledgeable about vegetarian protein sources.
Awesome.
I mean, I'm the first to tell you, like, I love this veggie chicken, and I was never a chicken person, and things. It's like, just, I think for the clients I see, and it's interestingly, where I've tried so many items over the years that I end up buying them and liking them and thinking, okay, I want to work these in too. So I think, I wouldn't be credible if I would say, oh, try this, but I can't tell you how the tofurkey pesto sausage tastes unless I'd had it myself.
I do like those tofurkey sausages.
Oh, yeah. That's the one I like. Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah. We used to eat a lot of, when I was growing up, my mom made a lot of amaranth, which was a grain that I think was a complete protein, but it's very earthy tasting. It almost tastes like dirt.
Yeah.
You have to put a lot of like onions and chickpeas in it.
I'm not into dirt, but yes.
That would be geophagia.
Yeah, got it.
Okay. So the opposite of vegan, the other very popular diet du jour that a lot of people like to mix up with their intermittent fasting is our favorite keto, paleo, carnivore diet, where people are eating like a caveman or just eating meat. Tell me about, how do these plans work with eating disorder patients and in general?
Well, the problem is, again, you're excluding another food group, and carbohydrates are what fuel our brain, our organs. We don't obtain energy from, you don't think, like, if you think of a marathon runner, you don't see a marathon runner grabbing a piece of steak at each mile. They're grabbing some bagel and banana. So if a person is just consuming protein, they'll probably find their caffeine consumption is greater. And also either their alcohol or their fruit or their dessert intake is up because they're craving carbohydrates. And carbohydrates are the gas that fuel your car. And when you think about like a marathon runner, carbo loading, they have a sufficient amount of carbohydrates, not only leading up to the marathon, to have what's called sufficient glycogen reserves. That's that readily form of energy that after your first 20, 30 minutes of movement, you get to those deep reserves. And what happens is with these folks, they definitely have not only other cravings and they're consuming more fat and more protein as a byproduct, but their kidneys are working overtime. They're more likely dehydrated. Calcium certainly could be leached out of the bones. But the truth of the matter is that they're more consumed about, again, what they're eating and what they're not eating, these food rules, because, when you're talking about keto and all these other types of programs, they're most likely constipated because they don't have enough fiber, and they're like, you need fiber, fat, fluid, and enough food to poop. And the problem, and there's many problems, but also the foul breath when you're spilling ketones. People now, and I'm laughing because someone was saying like, oh yeah, there are these items you could buy so you don't have foul breath. There's something vaginally, it's like, have a piece of bread and you don't have to buy anything special.
I know. I mean, from a psychological perspective, we know that when people restrict a food group like carbohydrates, they just wind up binging on them, or they go into the black and white thinking. And at least with my sample set, everybody who does keto or diets like that, low carb, no carb, just wind up binging terribly, in the evening, and then hating themselves. So I know that it's not healthy psychologically, and sounds like it's really not healthy physically either.
Not at all.
Okay. So my last question is really about people who have been steeped in diet culture for a long, long time and find that people mostly come to me for binge eating and bulimia. And when they find that they're just not able to stick to these plans that they're on, they come to me because they think that I'm going to help them stay on their diet. And I say, well, the only way to stop binge eating is to stop restricting. It's on the other side of it. But they're just petrified of going off their diets and implementing all foods and eating intuitively, or eating, or at least like being on a food plan where they're eating 3 times a day and they're including all their macronutrients. They have these long restrictive days and then binge all night. So given that fear that so many people have of going off their diet, can you tell me a little bit from a nutritional standpoint, what happens to people when they actively decide to add a variety of foods into their food intake, and when they start eating more foods and they start eating more often rather than restricting a food group or restricting times that they're eating?
So you want to know what happens once they start to incorporate a variety of foods?
Yeah, a variety of foods and start eating more often.
Well, first of all, these foods have been put on a pedestal and been seen as forbidden and unique. So when I help someone desensitize and be able to legalize a various food and food group, we oftentimes start with a food at a time, because to say like, eat whatever you want, it's a free for all, like that can send someone into a tailspin.
Yeah.
So I can tell you, like I was just discussing this with my last client who has, started to work rice in. It's the only complex carbohydrate she's working in. And so I was looking at our goals and I said, oh, did you try the oatmeal? And she just, kind of went off because the therapist and we brought this up. I said, well, you had suggested you like to try oatmeal. She's like, why do I need to try oatmeal? I'm eating rice. And I said, the idea that it's bringing up emotion is a reason you want to be able to legalize it. So it can feel like eating sauteed vegetables or an omelet or what have you. So being able to view it as it's just food, whether you're eating oatmeal or you're eating rice, you're eating bagels, you're eating spaghetti. When you give yourself permission to have that item over and over and over again, it doesn't seem as special. It's like, I remember the first time, even just saying this, like going to Disneyland, it's like, it's so exciting, it's great. And you've been there thousands of times and I still enjoy it, but it doesn't make me nervous or curious, like what's the experience like? And that's what I help clients with, is being able to learn how to legalize a variety of foods so they find that their mind is not consumed with when they're eating, why they're eating, what they have to cut back, what their movement will or will not be, and where it's exhausting to be in that place. And they'll find, and it's a long journey to get to, where they can trust the cravings that their body is telling them in regards to how often, how much, how little. Sometimes we eat more, other times we eat less, but we trust our body will make up the difference for it at the next meal. And it won't be an exhausting, confusing place to be in this tailspin about it.
Yeah. A lot of my clients find that they're really, because they're binging at night, they're afraid to start eating in the daytime because the
More
assumption is, right, they're like,
Yeah.
I'm going to be binging at night anyway, so I
Right.
can't afford the extra calories. What do you say to that?
Well, if they're focused on calories, you really need to put that on the back burner. Calories, my body changing, and surrendering to the process. Because again, they're trying to control the situation, but if that method had worked for them, they wouldn't be seeking the guidance of you or me or some other, clinician.
It's so, I always tell my clients that the very first thing that you need to do to have good mental health is just think of yourself as an infant. You need to eat, sleep, and poop. If you can do those three things, you are like halfway there to like good mental health. But for my clients, and I'm sure your clients, like eating, sleeping, and pooping are three of the hardest things.
Yes.
And they're the most basic.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly. And it's a form of self-care, a main form.
Yeah. Eat, sleep, poop. Do that and you're solid.
Yeah.
Is
you're on your way.
Is there anything else that you want to share with us?
I just want to say it's never too late to get help and support, and it takes courage and to be brave and to be able to find a team that can work with you, whether it's the chronic dieter or someone with an eating disorder, or even a family member that wants guidance in how they can help someone. I think there's so many wonderful providers out there that can help anyone. I wanted to say that.
Yeah. And if people want to learn more about you and your work, where can they find you?
They can find me on my website, askaboutfood.com, or my book website, theeatingdisordertrap.com. My Instagram is Robin with a Y, Goldberg RDN. And my Twitter is Robin with a Y, RDN.
Excellent. Thank you so much. It's been amazing to chat with you.
Thank you so much, Leora. I really appreciate the opportunity, and I always enjoy our conversations.
Me too.